Hi everybody, this is Gerald Rollies, Functional Nutrition Consultant, and today I want to talk about protein. Protein is so important, especially when we get it from our diet. Most of our clients, when we start a nutrition program with them, the first instruction that we give them is to eat protein at every meal, especially breakfast. It is key. Protein helps us rebuild our body, builds our bones, our muscles, all our organs, all our cells, all of our enzymes in our body actually rely on protein. Now, one thing a lot of people don't realize is that our bone is 1/3 protein. It's 1/3 minerals and 1/3 water. And if we don't eat sufficient protein, our bones start to get weaker and weaker over the decades that we live with insufficient protein intake. And so very important that everybody starts with that recommendation. If there's one thing that I can emphasize among my entire practice is just the focus on that. I don't care about supplements. I don't care about avoiding sugar, exercise, sweating. The first thing is protein, because without actual rebuilding blocks, it's very difficult for the body to heal. Okay, now the other thing is that protein is also important for hormone production. So for example, thyroid hormone, we actually have to have sufficient amounts of specific amino acids. There's tryptophan, we've heard of tyrosine, that's an important one for the production of thyroid hormone. And then we have other amino acids that come from protein that are important for the production of specific catecholamine type hormones, okay? So the adrenals, which are on the back of, right above your kidneys, they are responsible for producing adrenaline, noradrenaline, and that requires also specific amino acids that you have to get from food. So we need protein for rebuilding our body, building hormones. We also need protein as a source of energy. The great thing about protein is we can use it to rebuild our body, we can use it to provide energy when we're low on energy, and actually help stabilize blood sugar. Okay, so it's very, very important for those purposes. Now, there's certain amino acids that are essential. What that means is that term essential amino acid is it can only be acquired through your diet. It's not something your body can manufacture. So there are specific amino acids that you have to get from your food. And I always recommend that you start with foods that have complete amino acid profiles in the ratios that our body needs. And so there's a list, I'll have it on my website, nhicidaho.com, as well as in my book. And there's a list of very complete amino acid sources. I have not only animal-based, but I also have plant-based protein sources on there, okay? Now, very important for those who are in a catabolic state. So catabolism is ran and driven by specifically a couple hormones. The key one is cortisol. Cortisol, which is released by our adrenal glands, and actually that's what gets us awake in the morning, alert, active. And so if someone's not feeling that energy in the morning, then there might be a cortisol imbalance or challenges with the adrenal glands in the morning. But to keep in mind is that cortisol is released typically highest in the morning, also in higher amounts when we're stressed or when we're actually engaging in physical exercise. Cortisol levels will rise. And there's actual clinical studies showing that when a person consumes more protein or has more protein in their bloodstream, while they have an increased output of cortisol, that cortisol slows down the that protein slows down the cortisol's breakdown of the collagen or the protein in your bone. And most people have elevated cortisol levels in the morning. And if they don't have any protein for breakfast, unfortunately, that cortisol is going to go and find the collagen in the protein. And we start to see people have weaker bones over the decades in which they're skipping breakfast, and possibly even worse, if they're drinking more coffee or caffeine beverages to push their output of cortisol even higher. Okay, so the higher that cortisol is in the morning, the more protein ideally is in the bloodstream floating around. So then that cortisol can convert that protein in the bloodstream to energy rather than going to the bones and the muscles. So that's been clinically proven as a mechanism and a possibility of catabolism leading to weaker bones. And now I guest lecture at a lot of the traditional Chinese medicine campuses, and one of the tenets within Chinese medicine is that if anybody has weak bones or has osteoporosis, osteopenia, history of that, usually it's connected to the hormone system. And guess what? Cortisol is a catabolic hormone, meaning it breaks down tissues. And unfortunately, one of the targeted tissues in which it's breaking down is the collagen or the protein within bone. So first step to preventing any bone issues from developing is making sure you have healthy amounts of protein, especially at breakfast. Okay, the other is I want to talk about signs and symptoms that indicate that you might have challenges either digesting protein or have protein problems assimilating it, not using it, not laying down the protein appropriately within the body, and also possibly having too much catabolic activity. Remember, catabolic is breaking down the body. If someone is sleeping, typically we're anabolic, right? We're rebuilding the body, building muscles, building bone, building healthy organs. That's anabolic, the definition of that. So here's some signs that you can tell if you have challenges with digesting protein. So number one is you have gas with an odor. Okay, many people have gas or they get bloated and there's no odor. So that doesn't necessarily qualify in the protein digestion challenge area. But if you have odor, then there's an issue, and so you have to work on fixing that digestion. And there are many causes to those problems of digesting proteins improperly. So make sure you get that fixed. The second is usually, and I had this issue for most of my life, hangnails. So on the side of your nails, if it starts peeling off and not forming correctly, I would even, when I was younger, I would take and try to pull it off or bite off because it would always be unpeeling or peeling away. And I don't have that problem anymore because my protein digestion has been restored to optimal and I consume sufficient amounts of protein. But for you, if you have a hangnail issue and you're having to go to get manicures and have them cut off, or if you yourself are just biting them off, and guys don't necessarily always, I've never gotten a manicure, but so I would bite them off, and on occasion I'd bite and I'd rip a little bit off, and it, have a little red line of blood coming out, only because I didn't pull it or have a clean cut. So anyways, you're looking for that. If you have brittle or weak hair, and also skin thinning, okay? So when skin thins, think of the collagen protein in your skin. That's the same collagen protein that's in your bones and in your ligaments. And if your skin is starting to thin, that means that you're potentially in a hypercatabolic state, okay? Now, I have oftentimes a lot of patients that'll come in and they're applying prednisone creams, and it's a known side effect that if an individual, and you can check this out on PubMed.gov, if an individual is taking high doses of prednisone for extended periods of time or applying a cream, we're gonna start to see that that increased breakdown of collagen tissue. So be on the lookout for that. So those are just a couple symptoms. There's many other symptoms related to protein deficiency or catabolism, but those are some of the ones that I want to highlight. So what can you do today? The first is I want you to start focusing on eating a healthy protein at every meal, especially breakfast. And you're gonna be targeting around the size of your palm, okay? Just roughly around that amount. First start with whatever you're familiar with. If it's fish, if it's chicken, if it's shrimp, if it's beef, pork, whatever you're familiar with, and start creating some variety. Oftentimes I have patients who have been skipping breakfast for decades, and then their bones are weaker, and then they're like, okay, well, I've been eating eggs every day. Don't do eggs every day. It will get boring. I've done that before. Bring some variety. Sometimes I'll have a steak for breakfast and I'll have my eggs in the evening. Sometimes I'll even have a salmon fillet for breakfast, and I'll have my bacon and my eggs at lunch. So bring some variety. Whatever proteins you eat for lunch, dinner, have a couple, mix it into breakfast, because it will get boring. You don't want to eat the same thing over and over and over every single day, all right? The other thing you can do is to make sure that if you do exercise or you have an increased amount of stress, oftentimes the stress forces us and gears us towards sugar. That's when you should be having more protein. Remember, you have more stress, and cortisol is the stress hormone. It's elevated. And so what does that mean? You're more catabolic in that state. Or if you're running or engaging in physical activity, your cortisol is gonna be elevated so that your body can produce more energy. Have a little protein so it's in your bloodstream, and that cortisol goes after the protein within your bloodstream and not after the protein in your muscles or in your collagen, wherever that is in the bones, ligaments, and skin, okay? I will talk about intermittent fasting on another video. There is a wrong way to do intermittent fasting. I do intermittent fasting, but we've got to do it right. And the first area that most of the people I work with who are trying to restore their health, they skip breakfast when they're the most catabolic. So I hope that's not you, and if it is, it's okay. Now you've got the information. You can go ahead and start with increasing your protein consumption and making sure you're having that protein at breakfast. If you have any questions, comments, go ahead and put them down in the notes section. Be sure to like the page, forward this information if you find is important to anybody you know out there who's maybe dealing with protein digestion issues. Maybe they have gas with an odor. Maybe they have hangnails and they're always biting the edges. Maybe they have weak bones and they want them stronger. Or maybe they have a broken bone and it's not really healing as fast as it should. So I hope this information is helpful. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.